Hello everybody, this is Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and welcome back to another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. Today we're going to talk about the Savings Bank of Baltimore, and I'm supposed to be standing on the corner of Baltimore and Charles Streets. But one thing I've learned, and I've learned a lot of things from these videos, one thing I've learned is that in any hour of the day that there is enough light to film a video, the corner of Charles and Baltimore Streets is packed with fire trucks from the fire station by the Bromo Seltzer Tower, from ambulances from the University of Maryland on one part of Baltimore Street, from police cars on the other part of Baltimore Street, total cacophony. So I am here in my living room again, where it is blessedly quiet. All right, on to the Savings Bank. It was founded in 1818. January 1st was when the idea got started at a meeting in a hotel called the Indian Queen on Hanover Street. Sadly, no longer exists. And the idea behind the bank was not to make profit. It was founded by leading citizens of the day as a way to help a group of people that they called the working poor have a place where they could deposit their money and learn traits like frugality and economy and sobriety. Those were their terms, not mine. So the bank was unusual in that it was not profit seeking. And in fact, it limited its customers to those who really needed it. The first day that it opened, it took about 3 months to get going, but the first day it opened, let me read you a list. It had 9 depositors for a total of $170. Not exactly a rip-roaring start, but a good start. It had a carter, a tavern keeper, 2 tailors, a barber, a clerk, a baker, and a school teacher and his wife. So those were the type of folks it was going after. The first office it had was in donated space from an insurance company, and its first year of expenses were only 2, $150 for a secretary to record the deposits, and $4.50 for a sign out front. So even though we might think of the terms that the directors used for their customers as kind of condescending, they certainly practiced the frugality and the economy that they preached. So no doubt. All right, the first year the bank steadily grew, and its founding directors were a few names that you may recognize. And let me read you just quickly some founding directors. Fielding Lucas, a gentleman who had started a stationery store, Lucas and Brothers, that lasted all the way up until the 1990s as kind of a one-stop shop for office stuff. Jesse Hunt and Jacob Small, who were mayors of Baltimore. Moses Sheppard, the successful businessman who went on to help found the Sheppard Pratt Hospital. William Patterson, who donated land to become Patterson Park, and whose daughter Betsy briefly married Jerome Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother. And Alexander Brown, the first investment banker. Those were all originating directors of the bank. The bank grew slowly, and that was okay with its directors. In fact, the directors wanted it to grow for those who needed it. And they did that in 2 ways. The first was they limited the size of a deposit that you can make. And it grew over time, but you couldn't make any big deposits. And second, they periodically reviewed everybody's account. And so if you tried to game the system, if you were actually kind of wealthy and you tried to game the system by putting in a lot of little deposits, they would look at your overall amount, and if it was too big, they would cash you out. They'd call you in, cash you out, hand you all your money, and show you the door. How about that for a bank today? You've got too much money in our bank, please leave. But that's what they did back then. And the bank did grow steadily. In fact, in its 170-year existence, it's increased in the number of deposits every year except for 11. So pretty good run. It made it through the financial crisis of 1834. That was the first big one. This was when 2 banks in Baltimore failed. Their depositors lost all their money. The savings bank took a different tack. Instead of circling the wagons, it actually relaxed its policies. No longer would you need to give them a week's notice before withdrawing. And instead of being open 1 day a week, they were open every day of the week. And that was enough to instill confidence. And the folks who hadn't withdrawn money from the savings bank said they didn't need to. They had confidence. And the folks who had withdrawn money stood in line to put it back. So they weathered the storm there. In the Great Depression, largely with thanks to the board chair Archibald Sterling, they had squirreled away a huge nest egg. So when the Great Depression hit, Not only did they not have to, did they not close, they were continued to let people withdraw at will, and never had to borrow any money. So a really unbelievable record there as well. As for location, they moved around on downtown in the financial district, Water Street and Gay Street area. In 1853, they had done so well, they built their own building, what was described as a handsome brownstone. But then 1904 happens, and the Great Fire, and the fire burns everything in the financial district, including the Savings Bank of Baltimore. After things cooled down, it took about a week to cool down, the directors met back at the bank. It was nothing but rubble, I think a couple walls still standing, but they dug through and they pulled out the safe deposit box. And in it, they knew that depositors had deposited $25 million in cash and securities. And when they opened up that box, all $25 million was fully intact. So not a single depositor lost a single cent. Pretty neat. After the fire, they bopped around. They had offices in churches, even in the YMCA. But then in 1907, they built the building that we're standing, or should be standing in front of, the building we're talking about today. If you think it looks like a Greek temple, you're right. In fact, here's a little quiz. We'll put the answer at the end. Think back to your 6th grade art history class. Are the columns Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian? All right, hang tight. We'll tell you at the end. But it was built by a firm called Parker and Thomas that built a lot of B&O railroad buildings. And if you think it looks like a Greek temple, everybody thought it looked like a Greek temple from the day it was built. In fact, it became known as the Temple of Thrift, a moniker that the board of directors, I think, really embraced. The bank had a really good run up until the 1990s. No, actually, I think it was 2010. I'm sorry, 2010, when it was bought by a national bank, and I think that was SunTrust Bank. By that point, it had no longer been in the building. It had its offices in a skyscraper downtown. All right, I'm going to wrap up with one final small thing. Even though it catered to small-time depositors, not the high flyers, it did make loans to local businesses to get things started. And the businessman that it made the most loans to out of everybody, it made over 100 loans to this gentleman to help get him started. And that person was Johns Hopkins, who of course went on to become fabulously wealthy and gave away the bulk of his fortune for the hospital and the university. All right, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.